Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Catching Up with COPE podcast. COPE is the Coalition of Parents in Esports, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides programs and scholarships to empower youth, parents, and educators to utilize gaming to build confidence, curiosity, community, and careers. I am your host, Friday, and today I am here with PK. PK, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to have a little conversation with you today. To kind of start off, if you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in this space.
Awesome. Well, super great to be here with you. It's absolutely an honor being not only a gamer myself, but a parent of gamers. I greatly appreciate that everything that COPE does. Yep, glad to be here. PK Graff, I am the Esports coordinator for Forsyth County Schools here in North Atlanta, North Georgia. And I general manage about 600 gamers in 22 different programs, middle school and high school. And I get to do a lot of really cool stuff, implementing technology, working with IT, training coaches, teaching teachers, and playing with gamers. It's a lot of fun. That's my day job. My night job is working with Ghost Gaming as the director of Ghost Academy. And you can think of Ghost Academy as a talent forge for young up-and-coming gamers who are looking at the esports space and trying to figure out if there's opportunities that they want to fit into. And so that primarily focuses on one of two pathways, either content or comp. And so helping them better understand what it takes to go the content route or the comp route, and then get them the skills they need to be successful there.
Yes, awesome. Well, I want to dive into all of this, and I think I kind of want to ask you to sort of start things off, what it was that attracted you to esports and gaming, whether you were a gamer when you were younger, or whether that's something you've sort of fallen into as your time, like as you have said that you're a teacher, and you have a focus here on gaming and esports and what that can do in education. So sort of where's your background with esports and gaming?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I've really enjoyed this path that took me from being a young gamer. I remember my older brothers and sister playing on the family NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, watching them trying to master levels of Contra and the worlds of Mario. That kind of got me interested in video games. I never really dug in deep until high school. And then in high school, I had a lot of friends. I was more of a traditional athlete, but I had a lot of friends that also played video games. And right around the time of me coming into high school, this thing called Xbox came out. And so super cool platform that made gaming much more accessible, and then made competitive gaming even more accessible as things went online. Specifically, I remember the first competition I ever participated in. I was a sophomore in high school, and a group of buddies brought Xboxes. I think we had 3. I don't think we had 4. I knew you could network 4 of them together, but we networked 3 Xboxes together, and we had a Halo LAN. And it was super fun. I wasn't very good. I wasn't like a really good player. I didn't own an Xbox. I didn't own Halo, so I didn't get to play as much as they did. But what I found most interesting was the networking piece. So my friend's dad was an IT guy, and I remember working with him, and he showed me the network switch, and he showed me how we could monitor the data and the traffic moving on the network as they were playing. I was just fascinated by that. And that's kind of what sent me down the engineering and computer science pathway, which was what got me into education and, led to further degrees and, digging even deeper into the esports space. One more, I guess, piece there is that as I was doing the computer science thing, I'd always been using video games and video game design as a way to engage with my computer science students. And my friends at Georgia Department of Education knew that I was into video games. They knew that I played video games. And so it was end of 2018, going into 2019, I got a call from my buddy at the state Board of Education, and he said, "Hey, what do you know about this esports thing?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, let me tell you about it." And that led to me writing the standards for the Georgia high school esports class. Well, I didn't write all of them, but I led the team and helped finish all the standards. And now this is my fifth. This is the fifth consecutive year where I'm teaching a high school esports course.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I as a collegiate student, just finding esports at this time of my life and sort of the educational pathways that are available to me has been so important. So I can only imagine that, from a high school lens, or even going before that in like middle school, like that's, extremely important. And there's some incredible programming that, can come alongside esports and gaming. And I kind of want to ask because, you had said, you talked about your involvement, with Georgia, like the state of Georgia recognizing esports. Yep. And, I had heard that you were a commissioner of gaming for Georgia Scholastic Esports Foundation, hoping to provide opportunities for, students in Georgia to be able to use esports to acquire, skills in a variety of different areas. What do you think it is like to have, this sort of foundation and this ability to reach Scholastic in Georgia for esports? Because that's not a thing that a lot of states have. And what does it mean to you to be able to have, your community recognize the importance of esports and what you bring to that?
Yeah, locally, the recognition is profound. To say that is the smallest piece. I have the support of 22 different school administrations. Yeah. Like, that's crazy. Inside of my school system, they all agree that Scholastic Esports is important for their students. And it's so nuanced that I don't even know where to begin. But what I will say is that I think that the leadership that I have and the training that I've been given has helped me better understand really the why. And that was what you were kind of alluding to. It's really, I think, of recognition of the mission and the messaging. And the messaging is my belief. I'm trying to create an esports community, and I've actually written my second book is titled Esports is Community, and specifically that subtitle for that book is it's a place where all gamers can belong and thrive. And that fundamentally, that's all we are trying to do, is we are trying to create a competitive space where all gamers can belong. And then once we know those students feel like they belong to school, belong at their school, belong to a community, we know that will unlock their ability to thrive, because they're going to feel more engaged, they're going to feel more welcomed. And that's going to give them that mindset, even that shift in their heart to want to learn and want to engage with their other academic pursuits.
Yeah, absolutely. This brings up a couple things about what you said, because I think that, that support and that idea of, like you said, that esports is community, and being able to provide that sort of space and acknowledgement for students that, there's so many different ways to learn, and there's so many different ways to be involved in what you love, and that these pathways are open to them. And so I'm wondering, do you think that other states should sort of ride the same wavelength? Because personally, I do. I think I would love to see more recognition across the board in terms of implementing this sort of work into Scholastic. Do you feel like are you seeing more, because I'm a little bit new to the space. So are you seeing this sort of thing happening, or do you think that there can be more work done? to create that?
Of course, there can be more work. There's a lot more work, even in my ecosystem, my immediate community. There's still work to be done.
Yeah.
But to your point, or to your question, no, it is not systemic. And one of the most dangerous things in education is what we all refer to as unfunded mandates. So like a board of education saying you have to do this thing, and then it's like, cool, but like there's no money for it. So how do we do this thing without any money?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Scholastic Esports does fall into that trap a lot.
Yeah.
Until administrators, until system level people see, how important it is and how impactful it is, then it's like, oh yeah, we can find some money for it. So all of that being said, my opinion is always, it's time. It's start. Whatever ground zero, level zero is, that's where you start.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many programs I've seen kick off their initiative with a single Nintendo Switch playing offline games, Smash Bros, Brawlhalla, whatever.
Yep.
That I've seen a dozen or more programs in my local community start that way.
Yeah. No, and that's awesome. And I mean, I think we do all sort of start somewhere, and I think sometimes it can be discouraging to look around at, sort of, what's in the sphere that you aren't really connected to, as someone who's advocating for, an esports space on campus, and, working with the administration to try and make that possible for student life and for those who will benefit from the educational components of having access to certain computers and certain opportunities, things like that. It can be hard to look around and, know that there's other places that has these resources already available. And then, but to remember that we do have to start somewhere, and that, like, you're right, like it can start with literally like a Nintendo Switch. It can start, we can start ground zero and build all the way up. And so, I think that's a wonderful point you make. And you'd previously mentioned your book, which I do want to ask a bit about. So Mindful Gamer, Esports' community, talking about the emotional, mental, social aspects of esports. What, inspired you to write this book? Because it seems like you sort of, in your realm, you work on these sorts of things and these, these ideas and concepts with students and things like that. But like, what inspired you to write a book and this new medium,
Yeah, it's so funny. Like a book is so old school, but there's something very human nature about it. Being a digital guy, right? Like, I mean, dude, I've got two phones sitting right next to me. Like, I'm on a crazy computer and stuff, but like, there's still something so important about like the paper and the in education we call it external processing. So we're taking our thoughts and we're putting them on paper, and then we get to like reconsume them. And for me, that's a really important process, but also for the gamers that I work with. Mindful Gamer, my first book, I joke because it was actually my second book, but it was my first book that I published. Esports' community was supposed to come first, but I didn't like it.
Okay.
So I didn't publish version 1.
Interesting.
I was supposed to publish version 2 at the end of July, and I didn't like version 2. It still didn't get where I wanted to go. But version 3 is there, and I'm happy with it. It's going to come out in January. I'm super excited to bring it. I have an illustrator working on a new cover.
Awesome.
She's also doing some illustrations throughout. And I have some really, someone who I think is extremely influential in the esports space writing a preface for the book. So once all of that comes together, we'll push that out. But Mindful Gamer actually came from my research, and my research was conducted in a behavioral alternative school, and I formulated my research around simulating stress using video games. And so that research was titled Fostering Resiliency in At-Risk Students Through Scholastic Gaming.
Yeah.
And so that those situations that I put the gamers in that simulated stress, I was able to coach them through their response to that stress or response to those stressors.
Yeah.
And over time, that coaching became, or maybe it's better to say it distilled down to basically 5 parts. And that's now what is Mindful Gamer. The first part is a lesson, or maybe you can think of it as like a tool, a mental tool to use as you're going into your gaming sessions. And then there's 3 lessons in the middle. Those ones you use as you're in your gaming session. And then the 5th one is meant to be used as you're exiting your gaming session. And it all focuses on gamers learning how to manage their thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
That's awesome. That is awesome work. And that, it stemmed, the book itself stemmed from, the research that you were working on. Do you feel that there's like an element, because this is what I sort of feel like hearing that it sort of feels, there's no one's particularly happy to ever be in stressful situations, but I think there's like a level, it feels like a level of like safety almost to be able to simulate, these emotions, in an environment where, where something is not, because gaming can, is stressful. Sometimes it could be, it can freak you out, but it feels like that there is a level of like, familiarity with, some of the games or some of the, the elements of what you're learning. Do you feel that way? Or, when you were conducting this research that you found students felt a bit more safe in that environment being able to do this? Absolutely.
We had to deliberately create a safe environment. We had to purposefully build a safe environment. That was absolutely paramount. So the fact that you bring that up is absolutely on point. We could not have done this research if those students didn't trust me. And I'll tell you, it's so funny. Maybe it's not funny. It might be interesting to some of the listeners. If you've never played video games with children, like students, you might not totally understand this. But the second I pick up a gaming controller and I work them in Rocket League, immediate respect. They're like, dude, what? I'm like, I'm not even that good. But I'm good enough to take students who maybe don't play esports or play Rocket League competitively. I'm good enough to play well against them. So that's it. Then there's that immediate connection, and they know that I'm there to play video games with them, and that it's an environment. This is one of the first parts that we do when we introduce them to the gaming lab, is that I built this for you. This is a culmination of years worth of work, and I did all of it for you to be able to come into this school, a behavioral alternative student, a student so often that never felt like they belonged at school, but then they come to this alternative school and there's this teacher there that really cares about them. They know that I really care about them, and I'm going to sit down and play video games with them and talk to them about how video games affect the way we think, the way we feel, and how all of that comes out.
I think that's amazing. I think that level of connection and trust, and students being able to walk into a space knowing that, the teacher that you are there for them and to work with them instead of work against them, which I think, sometimes in school for students who struggle in different ways, whether it's, with learning or these social elements, it can be really hard to feel like that's an environment where they can try things without judgment or learn, that's always some of the hardest things is teachers wonder why students won't like raise their hand in class, or very simple things, or you know what I'm saying, or like want to answer a question. There's a lot of fear of judgment when you can be in those sorts of situations and not feel that level of trust. So I think it's beautiful that, you bring up creating that trust and that connection with students in this environment, obviously, in relation to esports and gaming. I think is amazing. And then kind of going back a bit to the book, or to your, the book that's coming out, are you able to tell us a little bit about what, you hope readers will take away from your book, or from books in the past, like what you want them to grasp from the material?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been preaching it for years. I like to think there's a lot of insightful things in esports' community. One of the contrarian, I guess, is kind of the word that's probably describes it as a whole. I'm taking a look at esports and I'm like, what's wrong with this? What do I not like about this? And then I'm just calling it all out. And one of the main things is too often esports gets associated with the gamer, with the player, like the booga or the clicks or the tifu or the faker. Like, okay, cool. Yes. Like that's part of esports. But there's so much more. And so that's why I kind of shifted, like, esports is community. It is. And even more specifically, if the community is not there to support the game and the gamers that are, at the top level, at the professional level, there's nothing. There is no professional level, So it's like, I felt like there was this disconnect, and that disconnect means that there's not any rungs on the ladder, or there's too few rungs on the ladder. The scaffolding is not built very well. Sometimes there's like huge gaps, and no matter who you are, if you are learning the skills in this part of the community, you can't get there. Like you're never going to be able to get there. But like if you took this like crazy circuitous route, somehow miraculously you would end up there. So again, kind of shaping the esports space and saying, no, we need to refocus on the community aspect, starting at the grassroots. I talk about how everyone starts playing video games inside their home. Esports becomes esports. The genesis of esports is the first time you play against somebody else, right? Like your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your aunts, your uncles, whatever. That's like inside the house. And then you go to your street, you go to your neighborhood, you go to your community, usually that's your school level. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger after that until you get to the world level. And my belief is that there needs to be more opportunity and more rungs on the ladder, more scaffolding in place to be able to climb from playing competitively in your bedroom all the way to the world stage.
Yes, absolutely.
And collegiate's a huge part of that.
Yeah.
Like huge.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I'm so glad you brought this up about, really addressing the different like layers and levels and pathways in, because, and we even talk about this in like some of my courses right now that are just like in my senior residency course, we really talked about, the different pathways and the things that we do to get where we want to get to that like aren't talked about, that people don't address. And so I think in the same way with esports and understanding how to get from playing in your bedroom to like something on a big stage, like what that sort of can look like and the structures in place to help you grow and build community and further the community in that way. Because at the end of the day, like you said, like that's literally what it's all about. Like we have to be a community and we have to be connected in certain ways, or else none of this sort of thing would exist. So I think it's
right. And And why? So then, like, I guess maybe the question that drove this the most to me is why has esports lagged so far behind
Yeah.
the video game industry as a whole? Like what's the disconnect there? Because like if video games are such a billion-dollar business, like whatever you can pull all kinds of numbers, but then esports is like 100x smaller. Like why? Like what's going on there? Why is this a thing? There's lots of reasons, but basically it's my belief that it's the lack of grassroots level, Pop Warner football or Little League baseball. Like all the kids start playing at 5, 6, 7 years old, and there's an infrastructure in place. There's regulations, there's rules, there's leagues, all that sort of stuff. That's a whole nother can of worms we could go into, but I think doing this with school, having middle schools, build esports teams, teach the gamers how to compete, and then send them to high schools that play in varsity esports. For me has been a great model. I have 12 middle schools that feed into 8 high schools.
Awesome.
And we've been competing for varsity or competing in varsity esports for 5 years, and I think we have 8 or 9 state championships. So we've been successful, but it's really about creating that ecosystem, that community where they can all gamers can belong.
Absolutely, 1,000%. I love that. I actually did like for my course recently, this past, like, I was like 2 weeks ago, I had to come up with like an idea that I was like passionate about, and it had to do with like an esports after school program or something, something for the students that I know in my area, that something that doesn't exist yet. Like it does exist in other places, but like in terms of like, my community here, I was like, this is like a dream sort of thing, because I think it's the same way that like students, there's other after school programs. There's like, sometimes students go like play soccer. Sometimes they go to band, like different things like that. Like there's still, and that's all part of the structure and pathways that gets, students at that young age to sort of like filter in, like you had said, with like football or like Little League, like things like that. There's those little structures at the grassroots level that sort of help them, as they get older. And so that was my sort of intent behind it. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And then, also you had mentioned collegiate being just a huge aspect of this industry. And as a collegiate student myself, I, who really got exposed to this industry because of, my involvement in collegiate. I wanted to know, because you are the director of Ghost Gaming Academy. How did this even happen? How did you get, involved with Ghost, and how did, this academy sort of come to fruition and come to life?
I'd like to think they're making a lot of noise, basically.
Awesome.
Making enough noise. I'm fortunate to I live in North Georgia, not too far north of the city of Atlanta. Ghost moved from LA to Atlanta. And I know, or I knew the new owners, and a lot of the organization. And I mean, again, like I just got loud. I was like, hey, I see a lot of changes. I am seeing a lot of opportunity. Here's what I want to do, and here's how I want to do it. And they were like, dang, that is really different. Again, contrarian. It's not what everybody else is doing. And I'm like, just hear me out. Like, this is where I think things are going. And most importantly, this is what our gamers need. It may not be like best for Ghost in the short term, but what's best for Ghost is to have a strong community of gamers who are contributing to their own communities.
Yeah.
It's that layer mentality. So we have Ghost ambassadors from 12 different colleges and universities from around Georgia. And my goal is to mentor them. Each student, that mentorship looks different. Each gamer, that looks different. But again, the goal is to help them feel like they belong to a larger, greater community, but then give them skills and attributes and help them grow and develop so that they can go back or go into their gaming community at their college or university and help that org grow and help facilitate those needs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome, and I love that you said specifically that it's really this mentorship with the students is really specific to them and their needs for their community, because I think a lot of the times, if there are programs, ambassador programs, it's sort of all across the board that they're like, yes, like, well, we're gonna like work with our ambassadors to like go back into their community and do X, Y, and Z, but communities have different needs and are at different places, and that's that's a whole conversation about like that's equity, is making sure people get the resources that they need based upon where they are in their life situation. So for certain students at certain schools, it's a lot different support than another student that is part of the program. So I think it's really cool that it really is specific to the needs of these student ambassadors. And being able to give back to their communities, I think, is really important and awesome. And I think ambassador programs like that are the ones that are like going to continue to shake things up and continue to further that noise that you were originally making. How did it feel for you, I guess, to make that sort of noise and like start building something out like that? Because I think it can be really scary for a lot of people to want to make noise and just need someone to take a chance on them. How did it feel for you to be able to create this program and be heard in the space about what is like the next big thing?
Yeah, and it's kind of you make noise and then you get the attention and you're like, oh crap. Okay, I guess we're gonna do this. But it's good. It's a good thing. I've seen a lot of change. I have seen the initiatives in Ghost ambassadors drive initiatives in Ghost proper, in the main Ghost org, which is really cool. And then I've seen Ghost HQ help drive initiative in Ghost ambassador. So it's really cool. It's a really neat relationship. There's good leaders. There's good, obviously there's good gamers, and there's good content creators involved in both, I don't want to say sides because it's not really sides, but in throughout the entire org. But what's really neat about the ambassador program is we are able to provide opportunity to collegiate gamers that they probably wouldn't have otherwise. And that's not only like leadership opportunities in the Georgia Esports League, which is called GEL, but also in terms of like the Esports Summit, Creator Summit, Georgia Games Week, which, multiple of our ambassadors were there. They were on panels at DreamHack, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, I put on my own conference. I will have ambassadors there. I have, we have some esports events that are held here in Georgia, and ambassadors are given the opportunity to go to those, not only as spectators and competitors, but as, content creators and, production crew and all that sort of good stuff. So there's lots, it helps create a lot of opportunity. And again, it kind of dials down to what does each ambassador want? What do they need? What skills are they going after? I mean, we've got ambassadors who are coaches. We have ambassadors who are players. We have ambassadors who are shoutcasters and commentators, business operations, social media managers, like all of it. And it's like, yes, great. That's what you want to do. That's what you're good at. Okay, that's what we're going to focus on. How do we leverage those skills? What do you want to do to contribute to this thing?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I'm lucky enough to know a few of the ambassadors, and they're, all wonderful, and seeing all the different things that they're doing. And I think, you had said this idea of like creating opportunities for all of the different ambassadors. Cause I think, this goes back to sort of, everything we're sort of talking about. There's so much opportunity in general and so many different pathways for students and people who are interested in esports, because it's, there's not one way sort of to be involved. And so I think having a variety of different ambassadors interested in different things, I think is awesome, because that then, helps to showcase like how many different opportunities that there are, and, continue to further the resources that are available for people. And I think sometimes with, just with like, esports orgs in general, they'll have competitive teams, and then they'll have like their content creators, and it can very much seem like it's just those two things, and that's all that's really available for people when it comes to like an esports org. So I think the diversity of students that you have for the ambassador program doing different things, I think is like that, helps show the, younger generation and those who are looking to get into the industry that there's so many different things that they can do and be involved with in esports. So I think that's awesome that you really have a focus on that. And there's not just one sort of narrow view of what an ambassador or what a creator sort of looks like in the industry. And I wanted to ask you a couple sort of just like general questions. Can you share a valuable piece of advice or mentorship that has had a lasting impact on you and your career in the space?
Yeah. Well, from my day job, from my work as a teacher, I was very early on. I was a chemical engineer by trade. And I got into education because when I was at university, I was a TA, GA, and I loved teaching classes.
Yeah.
And so after being a chemical engineer, or a few years in, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I became a teacher, went into did another master's degree in education. And one of the first things I learned from a mentor teacher was to always consider who is doing the thinking. Whoever's doing the thinking, that's who is learning. And so I like to build my lessons and build my lesson plans off of who's going to be doing the thinking. And a lot of times students get uncomfortable in that situation. They just want to be told what to do. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to get you to think. Because when you start to think about this prompt, this is supposed to drive you to what you need to learn. And so that has been very, very impactful for me, especially in the esports space, because I've been kind of like trying to build this new narrative of what I believe esports is. I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to tell my story to help add my ideas to the pool of knowledge, and then hopefully see something better come out. But it's along the lines of who's actually playing. And just like the who is thinking, whoever is playing, that's who I believe is doing esports. I'm not even sure you have to be competing. I talk about the mindset of I use Rocket League as the example. The mindset of you choose casual or you choose competitive game mode. Right there, I think that is the first step into esports. Playing Fortnite.
Yeah.
Do you queue casual or do you play ranked? Once you choose to play ranked, that's your first step into esports. So then where are the guardrails? Where's the scaffolding? Games like Fortnite do a good job. Even Rocket League, I think, does a pretty good job, because you can play in tournaments, Psionics built-in tournament mode that's skill-based. So you're playing mostly against other gamers who are at or around your skill level. similar to Fortnite. So, but why do we not talk about that? Right? Like, why is that not part of the narrative, part of the conversation? And so that's kind of how the mentorship and guidance has now kind of transformed my view of what esports really is. Obviously, I understand that like there's a lot more to it, but connecting that with some of the mentors that I have in the esports space, I have seen a lot of their perspectives shift, which is really cool. Now, I don't want them to align with me just to align with me. But what I've seen is they used to have this perspective, and now it's kind of shifting a little bit, and it's becoming a little more gray, because it's not black and white. It's not, you're either this pro gamer or you're not esports. And it's like, that's the problem, right? Like, so how do we build this narrative of who's playing? Whoever is playing, there you have esports.
I love that. And specifically that you sort of explained it as it being not black and white, as like being a pro gamer or not, does like there's a whole in between of esports that still exists if you're playing the game and competing. You don't have to be just the pro gamer for you to be considered a player in esports and someone involved. And so I love that you explained it that way, and your viewpoint on that. I do have a couple hot seat questions, which aren't crazy.
Oh, all right.
But I'm going to say they aren't crazy, but they're a little out there. Do you believe that pineapple belongs on pizza?
Do I like it? Yeah, of course I like it. So, I mean, I guess by default it belongs.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Question number 1, checked off the list. Number 2,
awesome.
You're deserted on an island. You can only bring 3 things. What would you bring? It could be practical. It could not make any sense. Just 3 things.
I mean, if I go the practical route, I'm gonna need a tarp, a flint stick and flint stick and striker, so I don't have to go all Wilson on it. I think a pretty obvious answer would be something that would help me secure water in a practical sense. But for funsies, maybe like a blow up donut or something. Like, I don't know, if I'm stuck, like may as well be able to lay back and lounge on the beach.
Bit. Yeah, no, I love it. That's
beach
great.
Chair.
A perfect for funsies answer. Could not agree more.
Or some adult size like water wings or something.
Float. Love it. Perfect. If you could find a way to turn any game into an esport, what would it be and why? Like, I'm ready for competitive Animal Crossing. Like, I'm ready for us just to go head to head in Animal Crossing in some way.
That's actually pretty funny that you brought that up, because that was one of the first games that we talked about, and we did a little event for girls. So fighting to get more girls into esports. We were talking about having an Animal Crossing competition where they present their livestock, and it would have been all about like how they do their presentation, how well they're articulating their ideas and presenting, just like the FFA competitions. So basically it was like during COVID, we were going to take the FFA rules and do it in Animal Crossing.
Oh,
it's still in the book. It's still in the plans. I just don't know when I'm going to be able to make it happen.
That's cool. I like that.
Any game into an esport. Wow. This is soccer. I mean, I grew up playing competitive soccer, and while EA has their stuff and FIFA is doing whatever over there, I wish I would love to see some sort of like crazy VR soccer esport. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because they did a
Cool.
football one and it's pretty cool. It's interesting. I think virtual reality is a really cool, neat way to kind of expand on esports
Oh,
in a
definitely.
more human, more human way.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe a really like a cool soccer game that actually plays well, that's not ruled by companies.
I
I'm
hear
just going to
you.
leave it at that.
Yeah. I was picking up what you were putting down on that one. Okay, no, I love that. I think that's great. And then sort of like on that same wavelength with video games, do you have a favorite video game and a favorite esport? They can obviously be the same thing, but they can also be two different things.
Favorite video game. I I've gone back and forth on this one. The game that I have probably the most time in, outside of like esports games, is No Man's Sky.
Hmm.
Uh, I love I love space, and I wanted to be an astrophysicist.
Oh,
Ended
wow.
up being a chemical engineer. I double majored in chemistry and physics, so I was a physics guy.
Not at
I've
all.
taught physics a
Yeah.
lot, five or 6 years of physics, so I enjoy that stuff. I really love like space exploration and stuff. So No Man's Sky is probably like my favorite non-esport game. And esports wise, the game I had the most success in was a game called Echo Arena. It was a
Ooh.
VR game. Had a lot of fun playing that one. I got pretty good. I was about average in the Master League, which was
Okay.
good, and it was competitive and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But Fortnite's definitely my go-to competitive game.
I hear
Also,
you.
not terribly good, but I'm a good IGL, so
Ooh,
I'm
okay.
never gonna make it as a fragger, but
You
IGL
know,
I'm pretty solid.
that's still, you know what? We take that as a win because I'm good at neither of those and I'm good at helping out when I need to help out and everyone else does the rest. So, to be fair,
Yep.
totally hear you. But those were some great responses. And I want to thank you so much for being here today, PK. These conversations were so insightful. And I feel like I learned so much. So I know that so many others are going to as well. Where can people find you on social media to stay up to date?
That's a great question. I do my best with social media. I am like super busy, but X and LinkedIn are basically the only social medias that I use. I have an Instagram and Facebook and stuff, but I don't really use them.
All right.
On X, you can either search PK Graff, or you can go, I believe it is THE underscore CH3M1ST, as the chemist. And then on LinkedIn, you can find me as PK Graff. So those are really the two best ones.
Yeah, awesome. Listen. I use those two the most, I would say. So I'm
Yeah.
right there with you. But PK, thank you again so much for being here. Everyone, all of PK's social media that he just talked about can be found in the link below alongside all of the Cope social media. So make sure to check us out. We're a resource that is always available and we have a lot of fun content coming for you, like more of these podcast episodes. So make sure to subscribe at CopeGG on YouTube and then at CopeGG on Twitter, which is where we do most of our updates. But thank you again so much for being here, PK. And I will see you all in the next episode. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Thank you.